To give you some context on how I viewed Simba, how I view my dog Zushi, and how a lot of people, yourselves probably included, feel about their pets, is now not only are they family, but they're also like our starter kids, or our first, like we might have grown up with pets, but like the pets that we have are really ones that we might be practicing parenting on in some ways, and we get them before we get married and buy our own homes and have our own kids. Just that like backdrop, I think is an interesting one, where like, just to give you some context, we spent $100 billion on our pets last year in the US. That's insane. And there's 185 million. That's actually an underestimate of how many dogs and cats there are in the US. And when it comes to pet spend as a category of consumer spend, it's one of the fastest growing. And you can see here that pet spend is 100 billion. It went up 30 billion from 30 years ago, and it's about to be 275 billion by the end of 2030. And so pet spend, when I talk about pet spend, it's inclusive of vet costs and vet care, as well as like pet food and yada, yada. And so because of this, and as part of this, pet health insurance is growing rapidly in adoption. And that's why I think you guys are coming out to learn about this, so you feel like you can have good conversations with your clients about them in a way that helps them and helps yourselves as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that just in just a sec. So to give you some pet insurance 101, when it comes to how much we spent on pet insurance, it's around 2 billion. And that number is growing rapidly year over year. The growth rate is actually accelerating. There's around 3 million insured pets, which, as you've seen from the previous slide about like how many pets there are, like the penetration, or the adoption rather, of pet insurance is really low. It's actually only 2.5% of pet owners have pet insurance today, compared to 90% of dogs in Sweden are covered by pet insurance, to the point where people in Sweden literally think pet insurance is mandatory. And it's around 25% in the UK, so 1 in 4, and we're just a lot smaller, but rapidly growing. And the thing to note about this space today is there's a lot more companies that are offering coverage, and there's a lot better pricing and actual coverage now than there was 5 years ago. And I'll get into that in just a second. But for example, 5 years ago, pet insurance companies didn't even cover breed-specific illnesses, and they didn't even cover cancer. So it's like, what is even the point? So it's improved a ton. Like I said here, greater awareness that pet insurance exists because I think expensive bills, and thanks to amazing vets. And the flip side of high vet costs means, and you guys are studying this, there's amazing procedures that weren't available before that are available now, right? Like chemotherapy, radiation therapy, like CT scans, the list goes on and on. So with that good comes the negative, which is it's difficult for people to pay out of pocket, ourselves included. So the implications and opportunities here of pet insurance as it relates to your lives is, from a pet parent perspective, we a lot of times don't think maybe we need pet insurance. We're like, oh, like maybe it's not worth the money, or maybe it won't cover what I need it to, or maybe I think it's the right thing to do, but I kind of procrastinate, and then just until something happens and I'm like, oh shoot, I should have done this before. In some cases, like truly can't afford it. And then there also are some folks that are like, I don't know if I trust insurance because insurance has treated me poorly in the past. How this overall impacts the pet's care is that, like, and you probably have seen this too in the data, which is pet owners will, they might delay taking their pets to the vet or going in for that annual checkup because they're worried about cost. Or if you present them with some diagnoses or treatment recommendations, they might not do it because they're like, oh, I don't want to have to pay that much out of pocket. And they might just kind of like sit tight and hope that things go away instead of actually being proactive. And when it comes to the veterinarian perspective, I think what we've seen through the data and through Sarah and the vet clinics that we work with is insurance isn't and shouldn't necessarily be a veterinarian's area of expertise. Like, combined with the fact that vets often have very little time during the appointment to cover all the things, right? And might be uncomfortable picking one provider or one plan and being like, you should go with this one because you may not just be sure. Also reputational risk. So despite all that, it is hugely important for vets that clients are insured. Being insured means that there can be better diagnostics, better care, best medicine, and you can do more for your pets than you otherwise would. So a quote here from Sarah is, "I've had numerous clients tell me they're willing to pursue diagnostics and treatments recommended because they know that their pet insurance is going to reimburse a significant portion of those costs. Having pet insurance allows them to take care of their pets as fully as they would like without having to make difficult decisions based on finances." Thinking back to my own experience with Simba, being forced to place a monetary value on his life, which is really traumatizing, especially at that time that it's happening, and really making medical decisions based on financials is not what anyone wants. And so instead of having to go through kind of like option A, option B, option C, option D, based on financial constraints, the conversation is just a lot easier, and you don't have to really delve too much into the money piece because we've transferred that risk over to the insurance company. The other thing that I think is really interesting here is the AVMA, American Vet Medical Association, states that pet insurance adoption will translate to $7 billion worth of veterinary care that's like a missed opportunity currently for clinics across the country, and will help economic sustainability of the veterinary practices as well as the livelihood of pets. Great. Next. Okay, so I know there's a lot of words on this slide, and some of you might have varying degrees of familiarity with insurance, but our whole job is we're trying to distill it down and make it as simple as possible to cover. The thing that's hilarious but so classic about pet insurance is insurance is not something just generally that we're all that familiar with as a society. We don't talk about it constantly. And then of course, pet insurance doesn't work like human health insurance. It doesn't work like any other flavor of insurance that we might be familiar with or not familiar with. So when it comes to the insurance coverage, there are three main areas. The first is accidents. The second is illnesses. And the third is like more preventive and routine care. And the vast majority of all plans that people have are accidents and illnesses bundled together. So it's ultimately like the unexpected, and then the expected, so the wellness is like an optional add-on to that base plan. For accidents cover hospitalization, surgeries, prescription medication, the list goes on and on, for a broken leg, or getting hit by a car, God forbid, or getting bitten by another dog at the dog park, or swallowing something that you shouldn't, or tearing of any ligaments. And especially when it comes to orthopedic conditions, the waiting periods can actually be up to 6 months or even a year, which most people don't know about. On the illness side, and that's what insurance covers. And on the illness side, illnesses can be as severe as cancer, diabetes, kidney disease, hypothyroidism, the list goes on and on. But also what I think a lot of pet owners like myself really care about is my insurance going to cover the things that I really care about when it comes to my Australian Shepherd that's predisposed, or German Shepherd predisposed to hip dysplasia? And the answer is yes. And again, like insurance for accident coverage will cover anything and everything related to treat that illness. On the wellness piece, which is an optional add-on, Kaylee, you and I chatted a little bit yesterday about flea tick and heartworm meds, right? Like those can really add up. They can cost a lot. If insurance could cover a portion of that, or a portion of dental cleaning, or a portion of my spay-neuter procedure, because it's going to cost a lot one time, that would be amazing. But the way that the wellness plans work today is they will cover only a fixed amount of those services, not the full amount. And so you're still out of pocket in a lot of instances, and often paying a lot per month to even get that wellness add-on. And so that's confusing to a lot of people. And we talk about that with customers all day, every day. We can come back to this too if you guys have questions about it. So talking about pre-existing conditions, which no company in the US today covers, very annoying. And the way that it's defined is symptoms having been present on the medical record prior to you getting insurance. And if it's not marked as resolved, or it's within their list of conditions that they're just like, nope, never will we ever cover this if there's anything listed on the medical record, it's pre-existing. Most of the insurance companies don't require medical records from you or the pet owner themselves. upon sign up or upon enrollment. Some offer like a 30-day medical review after you've signed up. If you send them the medical records ahead of time, they can tell you what's pre-existing and what's not pre-existing. There's pros and cons to that, because if they get a snapshot in time, there's pros and cons. But the good news, like I mentioned, is hereditary and congenital conditions are covered, as they should be. Kayla, you did mention the like microvalve disease that Cavalier King Charles Spaniels are not born with, but have a predisposition for. Would that count as a pre-existing condition with pet insurance? And that's no. If no symptoms are present at birth, which like we would figure out when you first bring them in for that first visit, then pet insurance would cover it. And especially if like the majority of Cavalier King Charles Spaniels get them at age 8 or around then, but they're not born with it, then you're good to go. And that would probably be reflected in prices if you sign your Cavalier King Charles Spaniel up when they're 8, for example. So a lot of what we talk about, and I think a lot of vets as well will talk about, is the best time to sign up for insurance is before anything has a chance to happen, so that it covers everything that you'd want it to cover. One misconception that I actually wanted to just quickly dispel as we're talking about maximal coverage and pre-existing conditions is if something happens to your pet, so an injury or an illness, something that requires treatment out of the ordinary, that doesn't jack up your prices. It's not like car insurance where if something happens, then your premium goes up and they kind of ding you for it. The way that price works, which I'll talk about more in just a second, is it's like a yearly industry-wide refresh calculation. And so it's nothing that you do that will change it to go up or down, if that makes sense. So to get into like the very nitty gritty, like if you are getting insurance today, the 3 choices that you get to make that really affect whether it's a good plan or a not so, good plan is the deductible, the reimbursement percentage, and the annual limit. So the deductible is like how much you're on the hook for before the insurance company pays you back. And within pet insurance, it's typically an annual deductible from $100 to $1,000. You just pick a number, you're like, this is my deductible. Once I need it, then the insurance company will reimburse after that. And the way that deductibles work today is the vast majority of providers, actually all of them except for one, will do an annual deductible, which is a lot more intuitive and easy to understand. The per incident one, which I'll talk about in just a second, has different implications, and there's pros and cons to either. The lower the deductible, so the lower amount that you're on the hook for, obviously the insurance company is going to charge you more. And then the higher deductible that you're more comfortable footing, whether it's $500 or $750 or $1,000, then you can actually get your monthly cost to be quite low if you just have that trade-off. The second piece is the reimbursement percentage. So what percentage of the total bill is the insurance company going to pay to you? And of course, the higher the bill, you're going to want to get as much of that money back as possible. And the reimbursement percentages in the industry range from 50 to 100. 100 meaning once you hit your deductible, the insurance company will pay you everything else on the bill. And 50 meaning only half that, which at high numbers can make a huge difference. And then of course, the lower the reimbursement that the insurance company is going to give to you, the less expensive, and then the higher, the higher. And when it comes to the annual limit, this is if you've ever bought something that they kind of defaulted you to like a really arbitrarily low limit. I'll explain what I mean, but is there a limit at all to what the insurance company is going to pay to you in any given year? Some really good companies will have unlimited, which TBD if you actually need that, but unlimited means truly unlimited. I think the largest claim that was paid out to a single pet owner last year was $100,000. So when they say unlimited, it truly is. Most cases shouldn't be nearly that amount. But a lot of some of the shadier companies, in our opinion, will default you to like, let's say 2,000 or 3,000, where, let's say you have a $10,000 bill and you're stuck with kind of this like really low annual limit. You'll be really upset that you just diligently paid for insurance. And then when the time came that you actually needed it, it wasn't covering what you wanted it to. So typically it's from 2,000 or 3,000 all the way to unlimited. And then we recommend the higher the limit, the better, because the way that it shakes out with the monthly price is it actually doesn't have a huge impact. The deductible has way more of an impact than the annual limit does. And I know we're getting into a lot of nitty gritty, but I can send these slides afterward if this is something that you guys are interested in. Okay. Other things that affect the premium price. When it comes to the pricing that a lot of providers offer, you could see anything between $10 a month for cats, all the way up to like 40 or 50 or 60 bucks a month for cats, depending on where you live and depending on some of these factors that I'll talk about in a second. For dogs, it could be anywhere between like 20 and 30, all the way to like 60, 100, 150. And so the prices really do vary. And a lot of people are confused. Why is that the case? Like, is there more coverage for more expensive ones, or is the cheapest one the worst one? Generally speaking, it's like finding that balance between price and coverage, which is what we spend a lot of our time doing that. Because at the end of the day, that's what we care about as consumers, is finding the right one for us. The factors that affect the price that insurance companies will charge you is, one, where you live and where those vet costs are being accrued. And so obviously urban areas are going to be more expensive than rural areas, and bigger cities where vet costs are higher are going to be the most expensive across the country. For example, I used to live in the Bay Area, and a neuter surgery was going to cost around $1,300. So there's that. And then across the other factors, so it's zip code as well as breed, age, and gender. Gender, I didn't list it here, but it does have a very, very small impact, only for a few select providers. And when it comes to the pet breed, cats are less expensive than dogs, and mixed breeds are actually on the whole less expensive than purebreds. And when it comes to the age, just like with humans, we get sicker as we get older, which is a sad fact of life, but of course prices reflect that. And so the younger your pet is when you sign up, there's no lock in to the extent that you lock in a price for the entirety of your pet's life, but there is a lock-in policy window for a year. So you get locked in, and then at renewal, they'll tell you if your price goes up or down. Of course, it's like a bad experience if your price jumps a ton. That being said, a lot of the good insurance companies have underwriters that are more stable, and the ones that we work with are also ones that over the course of time, they don't spike up or they don't spike down. And there's also pets, not just the pet's age, but inflation that can increase costs as you go up. Typically what we've seen for like puppies and kittens and young pets is between the age of under 1, 2, and 3, prices will actually stay either exactly the same or extremely similar. But as you get to like 3, 4, 5, 6, prices will start to increase. And that coincides with the probability that they're going to get into something that involves treatment. Okay, the fun deductible types, the annual one or the per incident one. So annual deductible, vast majority of companies do an annual deductible where you just pick a number, 100 to 1,000, and you need to meet that deductible for the year, regardless of how many things happen to your pet in any given year. And it's better for pet owners that are worried or something does happen that is like your dog scratches his eye or he hurts his paw and he has diarrhea, and like you got to go in 3 times in a year, and it's unfortunate, but you don't want to be stuck paying the deductible every single time, versus the per incident deductible, where you have to pay it per incident. So per incident for that example that I just gave of scratching the paw, diarrhea, and like scratching cornea or some type of eye infection, though, like you'd be stuck paying the deductible each of those times. But then the flip side, the positive side of that is, what if you have something more chronic like allergies or cancer that can span multiple years and you don't think that a ton is going to happen to your pet? And so you want to go with more of a bet that it's only going to be a couple things throughout the lifetime of their pet. And for this, I actually have like in my appendix, if you guys are interested. So when it comes to the question time, let me know if you want me to go through an actual example of like like bills that come up and what the payouts look like at each of the different deductibles. So you can take a look at that. Let me know. Okay, so again, huge word bomb of a slide. The main point is there's a lot of nuance when it comes to pet insurance policies. Generally, directionally, they cover accidents, illnesses, and the wellness as an optional add-on, but there's some nuances that actually could be really important down the line. So for example, not all companies will cover dental illnesses. All of them will cover dental accidents like fractured teeth, but most of them, not the good ones though, but a lot of them don't cover what's needed to treat periodontal disease, which, as you guys know, symptoms show up early, and there's a high percentage of likelihood that a pet will need some type of dental care throughout their lives. Not all companies will cover holistic treatment. And so what I mean by that is like chiropractic or supplements, and they're like delivered by a licensed vet. Some companies cover it, some companies don't. And not all companies will cover physical therapy, so rehabilitation after something happens, or they'll ask you to pay a couple bucks extra per month. And if you don't do it upon sign up and something happens, you can't retroactively apply it because of pre-existing conditions. And then not all companies will cover prescription food, but some do. And some people might really want this. It's tough to know that you'll want it before you know that you need to have it. But it's just good to have the type of coverage for what you think makes sense. A lot of folks will come into this decision being like, hey, I had a pet growing up that experienced XYZ issues. And so I want to really make sure that these issues are covered for my pet. One common misconception is like, which clinics take insurance, or like, would they not take all forms of insurance? Like, how do you figure out which insurance like this clinic takes? And actually, pet insurance is available everywhere in the US or Canada, US and Canada. So there's no in-network or out-of-network. So the flexibility that customers get, the only like friction or downside to that is customers will pay upfront for the bill, like at the clinic, and then they'll get reimbursed afterward through like an app or like whatever the claims process is for each provider via claims after the fact. So most people don't know that. And in this case too, the nuances between the different providers is most of them will baseline offer US and Canada, and then some will offer international coverage even, for as long as the bill is translated into English, they'll cover it, which is kind of wild. And then lastly, there's insurance, which is for medical issues, but then there's still things like, what if you are in hospice and you desperately need help boarding your dog? There's a couple companies that will cover that, which is a non-medical issue. And then they'll also, some companies, not all, will cover like cremation and some end-of-life services. So long story short, the world of pet insurance can be a little bit complex, unnecessarily so, not very intuitive. And so that's why we kind of took it upon ourselves with our company to just be a company by pet parents for pet parents, where we just research all the nuances, stay up to date on everything so that we can help make sure that people feel confident that they have the best option. Especially since people will stay on their plans for many years, often the full lifetime of their pet, because it is like a long-term decision. So enter Fursure. So we just as a philosophy, we don't think that there's any trusted or loved company in the pet health insurance space just yet. I think you probably would be hard pressed to just list out a few different names. And a lot of the time people will look at these names and be like, Troopani, Embrace, Figo, Pets Best, Spot. They're like, I don't know who any of these players are. I don't know who to trust. So there is actually a big opportunity there. We're also, I think, a whole society that cares more about our pets than anything, yet we're deeply uneducated on how much it costs to take care of them. And often vets get blamed for that, which is not right. And so we think that there's a huge opportunity to reinvent how we as like Americans care for and spend on their pets, which is a huge opportunity to change lives, we think. So we're in the earliest of stages, and we're bringing personalization to helping you find the right option and bringing that level of transparency that doesn't exist yet. So here, just to walk through what that looks like, you have a bunch of different providers, 1, 2, 3, and 4 through 20, let's say, and you have all these different parameters involved in those plans, figuring out what the right one is for you, especially knowing that there's a lot on the line with pre-existing conditions. The other thing to note too with pre-existing conditions is if you sign up for a plan and you pay and everything's gravy for 5 years, but then for whatever reason, you decide to switch to a different company, that new company is going to take your dog or cat to be a new pet, and anything that's happened in their lives leading up to that point is now pre-existing and excluded. So that's how important it is to get on something that you feel confident in staying for a while. And so the things that we take into account are more than what's out there today. So it's not just your pet's age, breed, gender, and zip code, but also, is there a cap that you don't want to go above paying per month? You're like, hey, I only have this budgeted for this, and I want to make it work within that limit. And then also, what are the things that you really want to cover that matter to you at the end of the day? And what are some things that you're happy to kind of compromise on? And so for this one example, we work with Troopani and we work with many other ones, but we help folks find the right plan for them. And so to date, I mentioned that we helped thousands of pet parents, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Net Promoter Score, but kind of asking the question of how likely are you to recommend this service to your friends? We have an average across the thousands of a 9 out of 10, which is unheard of compared to insurance. As you might imagine, the industry of insurance is negative NPS, like literally below 0. And then around 40% of our customers refer other people. And this is a happy customer, Josie, on Instagram, who became Insta famous throughout the time that we helped her, which is pretty awesome. We have put together this marketplace, and in order to actually start selling insurance, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but even though we consider pets to be our family, under law, they're considered property. So under law, they're considered no different than your car or your home or your business or even like a piece of furniture. And so in order to sell, solicit, or talk about pet insurance, we needed to get licensed to be able to do that. And the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of folks that are now expected by customers to know about pet insurance, vets included, as well as shelters and breeders, often these folks are not licensed, right? Because why would they be? And so there's a little bit of like legal nuance there. We picked being a broker because we really wanted to be the voice of the pet owner, not of the insurance company. And so we always put pet parents and their experience first. So we got licensed, and then we have these agreements with the top insurance companies that lets us be free to customers, as we get paid by a commission when someone signs up with a policy, and it's essentially just a referral code link. And because we have happy customers and happy partners, now more partners want to get on. And so it's kind of a nice flywheel effect on the marketplace where we can continue adding value to our clients and our partners. And the way that we get our name out there is actually through vets as well as shelters and breeders. Since the places that I think most people are primed to be thinking about pet insurance, which like is not most times, is when you first get your pet and also when you take them in for medical care. Cool. And so lastly, I wanted to just talk about what it would look like if you guys were interested in signing up as pet owners for us to help you find the best pet insurance option for free, or working together as a vet in the years to come when you guys are owning your own practices or working at practices that you're really fired up about. Because I think at the end of the day, all that we want is to have a better understanding and a better level of communication between clients and vets when it comes to pet insurance, right? And I think that there's a lot of ways in which technology can help, because there is that breakdown in communication and expectation setting. And so we really want to be that bridge and kind of help offload that. So feel free to get in touch with either of these different ways. And I think that's all we had. I will stop there to see if you guys have any questions, but I also do have the list of questions that you guys sent, so I'm happy to go through those too, but I'll pause. Thank you for having me.
I have a quick question.
Yes, hit me.
Okay, so you mentioned that there is no in or out of network coverage difference like there is for human insurance. Like there's, for example, you have some medical providers that are in network and some that are out. But then at the same time, there is a difference of coverage of zip codes. So if you move, but you keep that insurance, how does that play a role? And if you're on vacation and you happen to be in a big city with your pet, how would that also play a role?
Great questions. Loving that. So what first and foremost, when it comes to the in-network and out-of-network, the way that it works is just that reimbursement process. In some cases, the clinics are actually helping to process the claims. There's one company that has direct billing. Our company, just full disclosure, is like trying to do a lot more to help with the payment side of things so that vets get paid on time and customers don't have to worry about having a lot of money up front. But to answer your question about the coverage of the zip codes when you move or if you're traveling. So traveling is a non-issue. You could be traveling anywhere for like even it's kind of a gray area. It could be a very high percentage, let's say, of your entire year is spent elsewhere. But as long as the zip code is one that you live part-time at or spend a lot of time at and can receive mail at, that's a zip code that you can put for your insurance. There's no like hard and fast rules. And so sometimes if folks have like a couple different places, we recommend the cheaper one, obviously. So the traveling is not a big deal. When it comes to moving, that also is not a very hard and fast rule or very regulated or like enforced or like looked at. But if you do move and you think that it's going to be cheaper, you probably be a little bit more on your feet to message them and say, hey, I moved. Can you tell me what my new rate is and refund me the difference if I paid annually? I literally just did that. I moved across the country away from the Bay Area where it's really expensive to a place where it's a lot cheaper. And then if you don't do it, then at some point, they might knock on your door and be like, oh, hey, do you want to change it? And then you change it at that point, because each policy is on an annual basis, even if you pay monthly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a question for you. Regarding, I know you were talking about like the per incident type thing. I've heard that a lot of people are a little wary because, what is considered, per incident, with insurance, it's kind of, usually people think that insurance is trying to like get over on you. And so they're always going to find a reason to make it a new incident or anything like that. And then like pre-existing conditions, like if your dog, I've heard someone say like their dog broke their leg once, and so now they won't cover any other fractures, even though they are separate things. So how do you guys like assess that with each company, or do you have like a score or something that you do to kind of help people decide between that?
Yeah. Oh, I like that idea about the score, because we're all about, with our recommendation engine, we have scores for everything, and it is one of the factors. But I think that there's more that we could probably do there to unpack. But I think so. One thing which is just a very annoying fact of life is like orthopedic or any like breaking of any legs is considered like incurable. And so once something happens, and we know, I think through just probabilities, it's like 50 to 80% likely that the next knee is going to go if there's like an ACL tear, which is awful. And it sucks mostly for pet owners, where if it happens and then you're like, oh shoot, I really want to get insurance, and then it doesn't cover that one issue. And same goes for the incurable with like allergies, because those bills can be extremely expensive and span many, many years. So then again, it's like, get insurance way before that happens. And I think more people are thinking about, hey, what are the risks that my breed of cat or dog is predisposed to, and let me protect against those as soon as physically possible when I first bring them home from the shelter, the breeder, or the rescue. But there are actually some things that are considered curable. So if it's like, let's say, a scratch on your eye, so an eye accident, that wouldn't be like an eye illness, but it's just annoying that they would try to tie it to it. And I think it puts vets in a difficult position, because the medical record is where you write down notes on what it's just, this is fact. You want to write down things that you're concerned about, things that have happened. And then of course, that's the one source of truth that the insurance companies go to, and they have their ways of kind of tying things back. So I think, again, it's more the motivation and urgency and timing of getting it as soon as possible before things have a chance to develop, and knowing what things will and won't be covered. And I'll even give you one example too of a decision that we helped one of our customers just make. He had been paying for Nationwide for like 9 years and paid a ton, but the prices got really high. And he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to switch to a different company. But so over those years, all the things that happened that could be now considered pre-existing compared to how much money he would save by going to a different company that covered a lot of great things. So he was like subtracting in his mind what the future could look like for these issues. And he was like, I'm still going to come out on top if I switch. And so I'm going to switch. So it's just an annoying thing that we have to process and think through, but it's something that we help our customers with all the time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
So I just had someone message me a question. They said, if I have insurance currently for my cat, which is through Healthy Paws, and I found a cheaper insurance option, Pets Best, would they not cover the costs related to his heart condition because his heart disease came about after he started the first pet insurance, but now wouldn't be new for the second insurance?
Do you mind actually repeating that? I was just taking down some notes, but I want to make sure that I answer accurately.
Yes, so essentially this person has pet insurance for their cat right now, but they found a different company that is cheaper. However, the cat has a heart condition, and if they switch, they're concerned that it would now be a pre-existing condition on the new insurance because it started after they had the existing insurance.
That is a great question. And annoyingly, yes, like that is the rightful concern that with Pets Best, if they switched companies and Pets Best, if something then happened down the line related to that heart condition, knock on wood, nothing happens. But if something happens related to that, Pets Best would look at the medical record and say, hey, this happened prior to you signing up for pet insurance with us. And so it's now pre-existing. That being said, if that's the only one and you kind of just think about this other company that has great coverage and you kind of compare them apples to apples, you may find that it's more worthwhile to go with that company. And I have intimate knowledge of both of those companies and their underwriters and their leadership. And so happy to talk more if she wants to ping me offline.
Great. And then I have a couple other questions in the chat.
Yay.
Brandon asked, typically, how does a veterinarian handle insurance claims, as in like paperwork and how the payment works?
Yeah, great question. When it comes to the payment side of things, most vet clinics will say, hey, we do enough, which is right. And the customer should feel free to upload the claims. And it kind of just happens like very separate. For the ones that do work with Troopani, which is the one company that does direct billing, they have a system with like codes and like forms, like pretty simple. And it's not the vet that does it. It's usually like the tech or the front desk or the or even like the receptionist, like anyone who kind of handles more of like the admin side of things. Some clinics will actually even have like a pet insurance liaison who helps with these things. But those that paperwork is like fairly straightforward, and then they'll send it off. And that payment process of like direct billing happens a lot faster. It's called Troopani Express. There are some other companies that also direct bill, and it just depends which clinic decides to work with which partners. So it's not very standardized, I would say.
Okay, but in those cases, to clarify, where they're not processing it as like the veterinary clinic, then the client would just pay up front and then they would be reimbursed later, right? So it's not
exactly.
Okay, cool. So it's not an issue of the vet not getting paid while that's pending.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, great. The next question is from Jenna. Would an animal being overweight in the past count as a pre-existing condition, and how do they determine that?
Good question. So because I don't know offhand what's listed on the medical record, the insurance company would just look at the medical record, and if they can find a connection or if they don't find a connection, that's like it's kind of hard for me to put my finger on it. That being said, we have folks that actually look at medical records, and we can talk to insurance companies as well to like figure that out for your particular case, Jenna, if that's of interest. But because it's not listed to my knowledge, like as a condition or as an ongoing issue, I wouldn't be worried about it. That being said, I would need to look into the details if that makes sense.
Great. And the third question that I'm seeing in the chat is from Emily. She wants to know, in your opinion, is there an advantage to using an insurance company that has more experience in the industry versus a newer company such as Lemonade or Pumpkin?
Okay, love that. So Pumpkin and Lemonade have a great user experience. They are kind of like more tech savvy, I would say, than some of the other insurance companies. No disrespect, because we work with all of the above. But when it comes to the more experienced part that can benefit you, so there's pros and cons. So I'll give you both. If you wanted to go with a company that has more experience, that would be because they have underwriters and they've collected a ton of data on prior claims and on prices. So they won't, in theory, like crazy jack up the prices because they realized that they had priced something incorrectly years ago, which is actually recently what happened with Healthy Paws. Unfortunately, like they had to increase their rates, and we're connected with like the VP of customer experience, and she was just on calls with customers all day, every day, explaining why. And it's really painful when that happens. And so that is a big benefit of going with someone that's been around a little bit longer. But the benefit of going with one of the newer companies is they're really hungry and eager to please. And so they might offer you better rates today. Maybe they'll jack it up in the future. And then ideally they would have maybe better customer support or customer experience, because that's what they pride themselves on.